Believe. Okay, there we go. We are live. Hi, guys. It's Shani with Healing Elements here again for a 21 spiritual question series. I'm very, very grateful. Super stoked. This person is amazing energy and here to give some testimonials. Her name is Janet Tarentino, and she's an author. She has a book, Dying to See, and it definitely is just beautiful to have her here. And I wanted to start off. She's a great orator. She's a good storyteller. And I would like to start off from something that means something to my heart. I know that it was what I consider to be a shared death experience with my dad, Janet. It was something profound in which I saw, his soul, which I believe to be his spirit ascending. And so I was just told, and I'm really glad that I don't know this story, kind of so I can be the audience member. So I was just told that there is something that she experienced when her dad passed. So Janet, anywhere you can go back, you can do detailed. I have no time limit. I'm a gift of gab type of girl. So yeah, I would love to hear your story. Love to hear your story.
Okay, let me lay out my experience, and that relates to what I wrote in my book, because since I'm a 3-time near-death experiencer, which I wasn't aware of when I had them, because I never heard of such a thing, and these studies were just coming out. I think they came out after that, and I didn't find out about them for years. But I took care of my parents during the last 5 years of their life, and I rented my home and I moved in with them because it was 24-hour care, and I took care of both of them. And they knew about my near-death experiences, and I was writing my book when I was with them. And so I asked them, as they got closer, if they would share with me everything that they experienced, saw, sensed, felt in any way during their dying process, so I could write about it in my next book. And they agreed. And because I was their caregiver, I made them sign, a contract giving me, rights to the story so I wouldn't get in trouble. And they always honor their contracts. And so I've got some amazing stories that'll go in my next book. But when I got the news that my dad's death was imminent, I happened to be out of the country again because my sweetheart lives in Austria. Mm. And my brother came in to spot me some time so I could go there. And they were fine when I left. But then I got the call, I think it was about 3 weeks later or to a month later, that Dad's death was imminent. And knowing that international travel is not fast, I put myself out in the universe, because after my near-death experiences, I picked up some skills. And so I put myself out into the universe at night when I went to bed, and I said, "Dad, are you there?" And he said, "Jan?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Am I going to make it in time?" And he said, "I'll try, but it'll be close." So the next morning I got up and I knew I was supposed to go. And as the universe works, I got a flight where usually none are available, and it was priced reasonably where they're usually sky high. And I got into Denver to catch my flight to Boise early, so I was able to catch an earlier flight in there. And my sister-in-law picked me up at the airport, and on our way down, my sister kept texting me, "Where are you? He's failing. He's failing." I looked at my sister-in-law. I said, "Well, he said it's going to be close." But I did make it there, and I was able to be with him the last 7 hours of his life. And he seemed to be resting peacefully, and I traveled, over 17 hours straight to get there, and I'd been there for hours. And since he was resting, I thought I'd lay down for a little nap. And I did. About 1:30 in the morning, I woke up in the middle of the night. And I just had the sense that I should start filming. In my mind, I thought that I would film his breathing because his breathing had changed. And then if I had questions, I could take it and show the nurse.
Okay.
So I started and stopped the film a few times. And on the 4th time that I started it, I waited for him. I caught his last exhale of breath, and I was waiting for him to breathe again, and he didn't. And I kept filming. And so later, when my sister and I viewed the film, because I was so concentrated on his mouth and his breathing, I didn't notice it, but we captured his spirit leaving his body. And it was a light blue.
Okay.
And when I saw my spirit body, I was a light blue, the color of the sky on a beautiful
Interesting.
day. Yeah.
Okay.
And so because his energy was leaving the body so fast, it had dispersed a little bit, and that's why it was a lighter blue than mine.
Okay.
But then during the film, when I was filming it, the film that I put on YouTube, I asked that that particular segment be cut out so not everybody'd have to watch the whole thing. And then I asked them to slow it down so I could get a better look.
Neat.
And so when they slowed it down, it changed direction because it had whipped out of his body so fast. It seemed to be going off to the right, which didn't make sense to me because my mom was in the hospital bed in the other room because she was dying at the same time. And I would have thought he went directly to her.
Okay.
But when I slowed it down, he was going to her. It's just that his, the spinning tire, you see a spinning tire so fast, it seems to change direction because our eyes can't cope with that speed.
Yes.
Well, it had looked like he was going to the right, when reality, when I slowed it down, he was going to the left. And you can see the light blue energy going over the bed and over his clothing because it was in the air. So yes,
that is fantastic.
So you just have to go to my Janet Tarentino YouTube channel and you can see it there.
Perfect. I love you. You read my mind. You answered like 4 of my questions, so I don't have to, I was going to say, what is your YouTube channel? That's beautiful. And I did not know that you filmed it. That is excellent. I love that type of thing. I'm ethereal, but I also love to see, that logical type of, let me make sure that I didn't just see this. But a couple of things I know that when you get on conversations with me, it'll be all over the place. But that you just mentioned something very interesting that I had noticed on your testimonial before, the color blue and the spirit. Ironically, these light beings, they were, I saw a UFO and then I had regressive therapy and saw, I had a recalled memory, and these 10-foot to 12-foot tall, beautiful beings, I felt like I knew them, I loved them. They were the color blue. I mean, they almost looked like, the silhouette of a human. However, that seems to ring true for a lot of things, is what I'm saying, that has to do with either astral travel. People will say they had a blue tinge, the iridescence type of thing. I just think that is really neat. That was a validation that you gave to me. And then also it reminded me just now of your story where, you had to slow it down to see. You had mentioned something in your testimony before, if I don't forget, is that I think your spirit guide was going very, very fast at some point because you were not in his dimension or whatnot. Now, I am so slow, but it's taken me a long time to understand that when somebody that I will be acquainted with, maybe just know a neighbor or know, when they pass, the first couple days after their passing, I will, be maybe in a meditative moment, and I will notice a silhouette, very barely visible, but it's there. And they'll be pacing or going just really fast. And I'll say, I wonder if that is who, what I'm channeling, this direct download, and I'm seeing them in the other, paper thin through the wall dimension. And it's just because they are at such a high vibration, they're going so fast. Right. So I was intrigued with what you said about those two things.
Yeah. That was mad because it didn't make sense to me. And this was when I was 15. But let's start at the beginning a little bit. Because so many people don't realize they've had experiences and they shove them aside because they weren't acceptable back in those days, or they couldn't explain them. But
or fear, right? Fear of judgment.
Fear. Yes, yeah. But I guess I've had them throughout my life, but it wasn't until my third near-death experience, when I was shown all these moments and told to understand them, that I started putting things together. But when I was actually a toddler, I had the porthole effect. My dad was building a house because I was the first daughter after 2 boys, and they needed a larger house. So he built a house and was excited to show my mom and dad, my mom the house rather. And so he took us and the kids, my mom and the kids, over to the house. And I remember I couldn't walk very well, and she was holding me in the crooks of her arm, and I remember seeing her hair, go across my vision. But as Dad explained the house to her, I knew exactly what it was going to look like, even though it wasn't built yet, because I had the porthole effect, like I was looking out of the eyes of this little girl into the world that I was going to be inhabiting, that I was inhabiting, but it was my soul looking out of the eyes. And I think a lot of people, when you close your eyes, you can kind of actually see the rims of your eyes, because those are the portholes to the world. It's our soul that's looking out of that. And then when I was 5, or actually it was pre-kindergarten age, so I was 4, I was waiting for all the kids to get home from school because I didn't have anybody to play with. And my mom was on the phone and was talking about adoption. So I asked her if I was adopted, and she said, "No, you're silly. You're our little girl." But the next thing out of my mouth, I'll always remember, because I told her I was going to die. Well, okay, but I'm going to die young. But at 4 years old, you have no idea, what age is. So I was kind of contemplating, like, what does that mean? And then I saw 3 visions go through in front of me. It was either in front of me or my mind, but it was my entire scope of vision. Yeah. And it was me at the 3 ages that I ended up having my near-death experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So those moments, there are certain moments in our life that are planned for us to experience. And these are learning moments for what we're here to do. And I know after my 3rd near-death experience, in that I was so confused about what am I supposed to do with all this stuff, because it kept happening, what
right?
is happening to me?
You're like, did I not get the memo?
Yeah, I finally asked him. I said, "What do you want me to do?" So just tell me. So I went to bed and I prayed about it, and I said the prayer. Okay, please tell me what to do. And if I don't get an answer from you tonight, I will know that's my answer and I don't have to do anything. But the next morning I woke up and I heard his voice say, "Make it about me." And he showed me writing a book, and he showed me talking about it. So that's when I knew that I had to do something. Of course, I didn't want to do that. So, I kept, scuffing around the house. Be careful what you ask for. Why did you ask that question?
Oh, that's like me. Yeah, that's great.
You want to stay in your little comfort zone,
right?
It's your protective little world. And now I had to step out of it. But after that, then these things happened so far apart, I didn't connect them. And when I was 15, I became very ill. And that was when my mom removed my sister from our room, because we shared a room, so she could sleep in bed with me. And one night, it was an extended illness. And one night when I felt like death warmed over, the light had been turned off for the night. And I remember waking up and looking up at the light, and I felt dizzy, even though I was laying flat in bed. I felt dizzy. I felt like I laid backwards. I felt like I fell backwards.
Like you
but
fell,
in essence, it was actually my spirit that had fallen out of my body and had went through the mattress and out. And then it was looking up. Then it was my spirit that was looking up at the ceiling. And that's when the ceiling turned to clouds. And then there was 2 spinning motions in the ceiling, the clouds. One on the left side of the room and one on the right side of the room. That's when those spinning motions opened up tunnels into 2 other worlds. And on the left one, since that one was the one that opened up first, my focus went there. And in that, off in the distance, I saw a sumo wrestler. And he was dressed in white and had a black top knot on his hair, in a white room, and was glowing in a white light. And all he did was look at me. But while he was watching me, he was walking on fast motion, because there was a little table there and a chair, and he was walking around the table. And no matter how he walked, he kept his vision on me, but it was on fast motion, like it's flipping through at the end of a film reel. And so I thought, it's kind of strange, but I wasn't afraid or anything, because I didn't understand what was going on. Yeah. And then I heard the beautiful music on the other side of the room, which took my focus over to that hole. Yeah. And that was where I saw through that tunnel blackness. It was actually blackness, but in came swishing a beautiful, beautiful woman in white lace gown, layers and layers of white lace, with long, almost black hair. And I think she was looking toward me at the first, but I was so fascinated by her dress, because I had was just going into high school, and I was interested in fashion and saving up for buying some beautiful clothes for high school, because that was the dating age, for my generation.
Yeah.
And so I was really looking forward to it. And but then she faced sideways and was communicating with the sumo wrestler, and they were talking telepathically, and I wasn't included in the conversation. So initially I thought of her as the music box lady because of the music, the beautiful music that she came swishing in on. And then eventually when she moved up and away at one point, I thought it was Daddy's little girl that he was setting up on a pedestal. And
that's just a download that came to you, right? Because I'm fascinated by this part. That just came as a knowing, right? Daddy's little girl. Just
it was just, that's how I could explain her. And I thought,
okay,
yeah, Daddy's little girl. Then eventually she came back and they talked some more. And then all of a sudden this is really compacting it, but they turned into balls of light. They all of a sudden turned into balls of light and then flew behind me and through around. I could see them through the wall, even though like I had an X-ray vision, to the side window, and then they bobbed up and down. I could see actually one of the balls turn sideways, like they were communicating with each other, turning to talk to each other.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then one ball left, one orb of light left, and then came back eventually, and then they both left. And I didn't want them to go, of course, because I knew them. Somehow I knew them, and I knew they were my friends, and didn't want them to leave. But that's when I had to settle back down into my body. Yes, and so in analyzing these situations, I came to find out that the sumo wrestler was my guide, because guides aren't always, he isn't actually an angelic watcher, and that's why they only watch you, and that's in the Bible it's referred to as an angelic observer or an angelic watcher. Both of those terms are
the watchers.
Yes. The watchers. Yeah. So he was there to protect and watch me and guide me, of course, naturally.
Yeah.
So our guides are not always look like what you expect.
Yes, definitely. From a different time and different aesthetic, but isn't that amazing how it's telepathic communication, so it doesn't matter. It's the love vibe, it's the vibration, right?
Yeah. And it was and I must have known at some point who the beautiful lady was, because that's why I thought of her as Daddy's little girl. And because it was, when she was in college, that a friend of hers took a picture, and it happened to be in a position that was similar to the position that she was in. And it was no doubt. And I have the pictures in my book of, I drew pictures of the sumo wrestler and the two holes. And then I drew pictures of those two side by side. I cut them out and put them side by side, so you can tell exactly that they are the same. The person, the beautiful lady, was my daughter.
Amazing.
So that shows that we have contracts with other spirits in this world to play parts. And if I had died that night, she wouldn't have been born 15 years in the future. Yeah. So she had come back to make sure, to remind me that we had this contract, and that to get back in the body. And that might have been why that I kind of thought of her as Daddy's little girl, because in a way, in a soul level, knew that she was supposed to be my daughter.
Yeah, I call those breadcrumbs, like little spiritual breadcrumbs. I feel they do that to me because maybe I'm a little dramatic or whatnot. I'll get shocked or whatnot. I feel like those little breadcrumbs, when it finally is the aha moment, you're like, oh, chilled it bits. How is I'm curious, how is your daughter in receiving? Have you spoken in length to her about this? Is she, spiritual? Does she, talk to you about the stories, or, how is she regarding this story?
Oh, yeah, she has no doubt that that's true. She doesn't remember it on her level. And yes, she's very spiritual too. She can sense spirits. And she's a Reiki healer, Reiki master, and so she has that skill. So she's following her pathway. It's a little bit different than mine, but they're all going to be leading to the same place anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So she's definitely open to it then. If she works with the vibrational energy and all that, that's awesome. Is she your only child?
No, I have 3. I've got 2
Okay.
sons that are older than her, and they're coming up too. So
Okay. That's neat. I know, right? The divine masculine might be a little bit behind depending on who we're talking about, but I agree that everybody is coming up, right? The grand awakening or whatever you want to label. So I'm wondering, I think that is fabulous that you came back and drew pictures of, did you draw by any chance? I think it's fascinating, the vortexes or the tunnels, the different ports that kind of
yes,
opened up.
yeah, I did. That
You
it
did.
shows the clouds, the ceiling of clouds, and the holes in each one, and then the music box lady in one hole, and the
Okay.
sumo wrestler in another. And then I put the they mean the music box lady and my picture of my daughter side by side. And then I
Right.
also did the second near death experience, which was a car accident. I actually have the pictures of the car in the book and what I saw from my perspective above the scene of the accident. And
Yes.
in the third near death experience, I drew a picture of what I saw there, as much as the initial
Yeah.
scene that I saw, which was
That's awesome.
Jesus and the light of God too.
I was just going to ask you about that, dear friend of mine. I love it. I'm very hippie. I'm very spiritual. People know that I do speak my truth, though. So although I do not subscribe to like, a lot of religions based on just because of my experience in the dogma, how I have a very personal, close relationship with Jesus, and I had a 40-day dream regarding him, and it was just fabulous. And so I wanted to ask you, yes, tell us anything that you have. I don't know, were you religious prior to seeing him? Did you have a relationship prior? Has that changed? I'm assuming yes, and all that good stuff. Would love to speak about that beautiful ascended master.
Yeah. My parents were Lutheran and they went to church a
Oh,
lot.
okay.
Yeah, and they took us children until we got old enough where we could, whine enough so we'd be left at home. Because
Yeah.
we went to school all week. We didn't want to go to
Right.
school on Sunday. And they did. They let us stay home and let us make up our own mind. And then as I grew, as teenagers are and life carries on, you get away from the church, which I did. Not that I ever didn't believe, because I always believed that there was a superpower. I just
Yes.
didn't know what it was, because I couldn't explain it. Just knew there was more there than I realized. And I could sense them as I was growing up, because I could sense my guide off to my left. I remember climbing up on a merry-go-round on the boat. I wanted to reach the top, and I could sense that there was something up to my left. And
Yeah.
indeed it is. And actually, I captured the orb in quite a few pictures too, that of him being there. So I know that he's usually up to my left or behind me, but they can go anywhere, but they're always in the area. And then I was saved by divine intervention in the second near-death experience. That was the car accident. And my parents, they lived in Idaho, and they had asked if they could have the kids for a month, which kind of got them out of the area from this accident. So I guess that was probably heaven's way of keeping the children safe at the time. So I had delivered the kids out to Boise and had come back and wanted to plant flowers on my deck out back so they would be nice and bloomed when the kids came home. And on my way home from getting the flowers, I hadn't fastened my seatbelt yet. I was going to do it on my way home. But I had failed to do that because I was only about a block and a half away from the flower nursery, and I was headed down this big hill toward the house. And at the bottom of the hill, I noticed that there was a car in the road, the middle lane, the same lane that I was in. And so my job was all analytical. It was analyzing, because I worked for a large manufacturing company, snack food manufacturing company, and I was in charge of getting the product to the customer in the least amount of miles, least cost. And so everything was analyzing. And so I analyzed the situation, and I noticed on the left there was a park, and on the right there was a grassy area. So I didn't know if there was a child in front of the car. Why was that car stopped? Because there was no lights there, no cross street, nothing there, no reason for that car to be stopped. So I decided to stop behind it, but in the meantime, the cars that had been in the distance caught up during the time I had stopped at the light on the corner, and everything, all that traffic was barreling down toward us. And when I looked in my rearview mirror, the pickup truck that was in my lane the driver was looking to the right and didn't see we were stopped. So I knew I was going to get hit.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I yelled, I screamed, "Oh my God, he's going to hit me," because I knew I didn't have time to put my seatbelt on. It was happening that fast. And then I heard, "Lay down across the seat and cover your face." And so I did as I was told. And then the accident transpired. There was one point where I saw a window shattering and in slow motion. And then because that collision of the truck hitting me made me head toward the back of the car, but then that pushed me into the car in front, and then my force that was going to throw me forward, but instead of being tossed forward, I felt an arm under my arms and another arm come under my knees, and I was picked up by a spiritual being who I could feel, but I couldn't see. And then I was looking down on the scene from another dimension through a hole in the clouds, even though it was a beautiful cloudless day. So that was the veil that I was looking through from the other dimension. And then I was whipped back into my body when everything ceased to move, and then someone ran up to the side of the car, and another person ran up to the other side of the car and asked if I was okay. And I said I was okay, until I sit up, and then I felt my head going to explode from being tossed around the car, because I didn't realize I had been tossed around the car because I was placed back in the front seat where I was told to lay down. But it was the rear window that I saw shattering. So my body had knocked the seats backwards and had thrown me in the back seat. And then I was thrown forward and placed back in the front seat where I initially started. So I was taken to the hospital, but I was released that afternoon with just abrasions on my shins. And then the trauma from being thrown around the car started. So I was in physical therapy for almost a year with muscle trauma. But I survived. And I know that was either it was the sumo wrestler that saved me or an angelic being. They say, the angels will protect you so you don't hit your foot on a stone. But I think that was because that was part of my lessons. If it was my time to go, I wouldn't have been saved. And so that was why I was saved. And that was part of what my book is about, is to, and I didn't feel anything during this accident. I felt no pain. So when people are in accidents, they're basically kind of immune to that pain until they're back in their body.
Yeah. So I think that's such a beautiful message to give to people and to keep on hammering it through, because, we're taught or programmed to not believe in anything like that as if it's impossible. Oh no, of course, that child that suffered. But I find it fascinating that part of your story, I remember that in your testimony about you hearing that. And I was just going to ask you, do you think that was the sumo wrestler, or maybe an ancestor, or Jesus himself, when you were told to get on the seat and to cover your face? So I just find it fascinating that oftentimes we dismiss that. But then when we get used to, I guess, maybe in this path of trusting spirit or whatever you want to say, when we listen, I have the chills. It is for a purpose, for part of our divine plan. I know you're speaking a lot of, which I totally, it's my knowing about soul contracts or plans, that is set out. We do have, I believe, free will of choices, but certain things are inevitable going to happen. Do you think that there is something to be said about people who talk about exit points, that you give yourself a planned, let's say, a date or time or a year, and that maybe if you don't pass away getting hit by a car on this day, then a couple days later, you're going to go ahead and exit at that point? There's a lot of people who talk about that, and so I don't have any knowledge myself about it. I was just curious.
Yes, I do believe that there is an exit, specified exit point. That was part of what I was shown, that has never been covered in any of my talks. It's part of my story, where he showed me an image of my brother. and in a certain position. And that was when I later was when my brother passed away. So that was one of the moments from the future that I was shown this image so that I would know that that was coming up and that was set to occur at that time frame. And at that when I went to his funeral, I had to fly in, of course, because he lived in Boise too. I went to the funeral home to see him for one last time. And I didn't know how to touch a dead body. I'd never seen one before. So I touched his face and I rubbed it in kind of a figure 8 motion, and I peppered kisses all over his face to say my goodbye. And I knew he was probably there because I was looking around and I said, yeah, I know you're probably here. And so then after the funeral, about a week after the funeral, my other brother, they were twins, that was heading home. He and his family were heading home after the funeral. And it was early morning, and I could hear the rustling, so I was kind of waking up. But as I was waking up, I was in a white room. And in this room, there was a door. In came my brother Doug, the one that passed away, floating in toward me. And I said, Doug. And he said, he had a big smile on his face. And just by the intention, we floated into each other's arms. And I could feel him just like he was in the physical. And then he rubbed my back in a figure 8 motion. I said, you knew you were there. And he looked at me and he smiled and he started backing away. And that's when I said, oh, don't go, Doug, don't go. But he backed up and then he disappeared. So that was his way of acknowledging that he was there, that they are always around. Yes. And then at the funeral, I had asked my dad if I could take pictures. And he said yes. And he was very thankful that I did. And we caught an orb just in front of the pastor as she was doing the cross. And so I know he was there at that the funeral, because they say they do come to their funerals.
Yes.
And I'm sure that was him. And later on, when my parents passed away, after they passed away, I took pictures there, and there were actually 3 orbs. So it'd be my mom, my dad, and my brother that I believe were there. One of the orbs was a light blue, like the color of my dad.
Interesting.
Yeah, when he left.
Oh, I love that about the pictures of the orbs and things. And I find that fascinating and uncanny that, of course, you can try all day at a specific event or whatnot, but then weddings, it's happened to me very many times. And it's usually someone will say, Shani, you have an orb on you again. It's just, I think that we're magnetic and we maybe have channeling capabilities. And so it is profound how many times it happens to us. I was going to ask you about something that is, you stated about that feeling about when you were going to sleep and you felt dizzy and you felt like you fell through like a whoosh. Yeah. I used to have that sensation several times when I was a kid, in and out of sleep. And so just recently, because I'm slow, I realized, I said, you know what that is? That is like going into the astral plane or something. Yeah. I think that you're doing that and then you wake up and so you feel that sensation. So I find that to be fascinating. You're the only person I've ever heard associate that feeling physically with something of the other side. So is that your take on it, or how do you feel?
Or coming back. It can even come back, because I felt myself coming back before, and I knew I was with somebody and I was flying into the bedroom.
Okay.
I could see, I knew I was flying into the bedroom. And then I could feel my body, leveling out, and I could feel that somebody was hanging onto my shirt like this, and then lowering my body into the bed. And then that's when I woke up, but I could feel the air through my hair as I was flying back into the room. But I could feel that lowering my body back into my physical form. So it can be but that was more gentle. It wasn't a whoosh, but it was a gentle re-entering of the body. But it can make you actually feel like you are froze.
Falling. Yeah, froze. Yeah.
Froze. Because you can't, your body doesn't want to move until it's actually in there. So in or out.
That's fascinating. I could talk all day about this stuff. I just find it to be the mysteries in life. I don't know why people go around trying to discount, because I just think it's open for exploration forever until something is solved. And even then,
Well, the reason I am very into orbs is because in my third near-death experience, that was when I suffocated to death due to an allergy.
Oh,
And that was when I couldn't breathe, and I was calling to my husband for help, and I could reach for him and I couldn't feel him, and he didn't answer my call. But it was because I hadn't moved. It was my spirit arm that had reached for him and my spirit voice that had called for him. Because when I was looking back down on my body and my husband lying in bed, my arms were still over my tummy, and I hadn't moved. And that's when I looked off to my right, and I saw an orb of light coming from the distance off to my right. And then, but I felt like I was floating in a pool of love, black velvety love. And I felt like I had taken the biggest, freshest breath of air that I'd ever taken. And I felt absolutely free. I was finally free. And I knew I was dead down there. And I was looking at my body from different directions just by the desire to look at something. You're there. And then I was back up the ceiling again. Actually, I was above the ceiling where the roof would be. Everything seems to melt away and you can see through it. But I saw something going on at my physical body. I saw a blue energy lifting out of my physical legs, my feet and my ankles, and then came out of my shins and up to my thighs. And what it was I was my physical, my energy, my soul consciousness that had left the upper part of my body. And I was now watching the remainder of my spirit body leave the lower half. It had stretched to get out of the physical form. And while I was laying there, before I saw the blue form lifting out, I saw a silver cord float by.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you if you subscribe to that. I've seen that once. Okay, yes. Tell us about that.
I saw it, but I didn't know what it was. And it was just I floated by once, and it was going very slowly in a left to right fashion across the front of my vision. But that was in a weightless atmosphere of no weight. And you could liken it to astronauts out in the atmosphere.
Like an umbilical cord, letting go, and they're just like, wait, okay, yes, interesting.
But I didn't know what that was until after all this stuff happened in it, and when I met Jesus, because the orb of light that was coming from the right ends up growing up into Jesus. But after that blue energy left my physical form, I could feel it drawing up to me. And as that energy drew up to me, the energy from the upper, I changed forms. And it was a blue energy. Now I changed forms, and I was an orb of light. I had changed into an orb of light, sitting in a wand of love, like children blow bubbles from. Yes. So that was God metaphorically telling me, he created me with just a breath. And it all relates to all these different things. The silver cord, which I didn't know is in the Bible, is in Ecclesiastics.
Is it really?
It is. When the silver cord snaps and the chalice falls over, you'll come home to me. I didn't know that until afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah, someone told me about it, and then I went and looked it up.
I'm going to read it after we're done. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah. And that's when I was sitting in the wand of love. Then that's when Jesus came in and grew up into the light being. I didn't know who he was initially, because he was infused with light and had light rays coming out of his heart center. And of course I was going too. So I was looking through those rays of light as well. I could see he had long hair down to about here. And I could see strands of hair going across his face, probably with the way I'm looking at this screen, be going this way, because where you are was where the other orb of light comes, because off in the distance on the left-hand side came another light, and it grew as Jesus was there. And when Jesus was there, I was thinking, he put his hand out to me, right hand out at me, palm up, and he says, "Time to come home, Jan." And I thought about my daughter. Yeah, I thought about my daughter, Gina. So I wonder how she's going to take my death. But I didn't have to ask him. He knew my thought. And he said, she'll be okay. So I was going to go. I didn't want to go back to my body. Nobody wants to go back to their body because you're in this, and this love and bliss and tranquility, like no other. You certainly wouldn't want to go back to the pace of the earth because it is a very thick atmosphere.
So heavy, and it's like a wetsuit of meat, and it just, yes, I can get that from transcendental moments. So I can't imagine having a near-death experience and really feeling,
Yeah. So I was going to go, but then this other light came forward, and it, when it grew, was next to Jesus. I could feel it had bubbling clouds around the outside, and God comes in the clouds, and it was God's energetic energy that was coming. And I could feel, even though it was white light, the most whitest light, I could feel the colors of the rainbow in that light. And that's when God reached out his energetic arms. I can only say energetic arms because I felt like I was being embraced and cradled against his chest. And then he showed me moments. He said, understand these moments, they matter. And specifically, it says moments, and it was just moments of my life. And in the Bible, it says every moment. It doesn't say every second is planned. Every moment is known before one breath is taken. So there are only certain moments of our life that are planned for learning, and we make choices, and we can go on any direction we want, and we can alter how those moments happen by the pathway that we take. So, even in the Bible, it says, I will guide you along the best pathway. It doesn't say the only pathway. And so, so it may manifest better in one direction than it will in the other. Maybe it's more tragic in the other direction. And so obviously I took a good pathway because I'm still here.
Have you ever heard of those books? When I was younger, I used to read these books, Choose Your Own Adventure books.
No.
They're basically that premise where you go to an endpoint of chapter 1, let's say, and it will ask you want to go to the left or right, and it takes you on trajectories. And then I used to just be fascinated because I'm like, oh, if you go that way, it'll, like you said, more beneficial or more benevolent, intriguing, because I've been having a lot of downloads and channeling regarding that to understand life itself, and what these lessons are. So anyway, those were, I thought I'd ask you about that. That is amazing insight that you're talking about. The different experiences that we planned, they're going to show up anyway. And I feel that, yes, we will be on the path, and he will never forsake us. I believe, that we will have that entity, the light beings or spirit guides, with us, but we might be, like you said, flung off on a whole new orbit. You know what I mean? And how we learn those lessons will change. Interesting.
Yeah. And another lesson that I'll tell you about here in a minute, but I still wanted to go to heaven after showing these moments, being told to understand, because I wanted to understand them there. But then the angels came, and when the angels came, I transformed into another shape, and then I was in the shape of a human person, just the outline form, but I was a white translucent figure then.
Okay, that's how I saw my dad's spirit. I didn't see blue, I saw white, and it was the silhouette.
So our spirit can change forms in any fashion or desire that it wants to. And so at that point, then the angels took me and they showed me the immediate future. And that in that experience, and it was showing my death, and I was allowed to become one with the universe. And I could be in all places at one time. But I still wanted to go. And so I was back in front of just on the precipice of going into God's light. And I was shown one more image. And that image was my middle son, Kurt. And I knew when I saw that picture that something was going to happen to him in the future. And if I wasn't there, his life would go down a more tragic pathway, a darker pathway, which I didn't want naturally. So when I saw that, I knew I couldn't go. And I told Jesus, I'm not ready to go yet. And he smiled and nodded his head. And that's when I turned back into my blue spirit body and I sat down. I put my butt down in her butt, Janet's butt.
Right?
Slipped a spirit foot into each foot. And I grabbed my spirit knees and I rock back and forth until I got up the momentum to lay back down and snap back in and help her sit up and gasp for air.
Beautiful. You were
Yeah.
determined. You were like, I'm going back for Kurt. That's amazing.
Yeah. And of course, I didn't understand any of this. So I
Yeah.
sat up and cried all night. And I knew I had to live my life wondering when the other shoe was going to drop for Kurt. And eventually it does. And he has some pretty amazing experiences himself, because he believes he was helped by an angel as well.
Wow.
And so it was, God orchestrates our life for things to come together when we want. But there was after these experiences, people who have near-death experiences, usually they have more spiritual experiences because maybe you're more aware of it, or you're now
the gate is open.
The gate is open. So one night I was brought up to heaven for a lesson review, and
neat. That's awesome.
Lessons. Yes. And because I had when I was a child, I had judged people, and I was when you judge people, it gets put in your face at some point in time. And my sweetheart, Bob, I had judged this man next door for wearing a Speedo type swimsuit. When my dad wore swimsuits down to his knees, because I mean,
it's really human nature, it's human nature. I mean,
Yeah, and
but the lesson there, I know what your essence of. I can feel it, and I think it's beautiful. But yeah, so you had just like you had the knack of noticing something and kind of scoffing, not evil, but
I just wasn't comfortable with it because he didn't have his clothing. He didn't have enough clothing on for me. And so I always hated those swimsuits. And so when I met Bob, and he was flying in for the first time to meet, because I helped him practice English, and it developed over time with that. And then he wanted to meet me, so he flew in, and he was looking at all the lakes, and he said, "You sure have a lot of lakes here." And he says, "I love swimming." I said, "Oh, really?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "What do they wear here?" I said, "They wear swimming suits down to their knees." And he says, "Oh, I wear a Speedo." I said, "Oh my God."
Karma.
I said, "What are you doing to me?" Yeah, so
that's great.
Put right in my face.
That's great.
Yeah, but anyway, they let it be known that they brought Bob into my life for a specific lesson, not only for the swimsuit lesson, but he took me to places where I had realized that I had misjudged other people in my life too, because I had seen different lifestyles and different ways of living, etc. And so people's pathways do cross for a reason, whether they're playing a significant portion in your life. It could be somebody that helps you connect with maybe a medium, or maybe they connect with you with an education that you wouldn't have been able to have if you didn't find them and make the necessary contacts. But yes, they are like that. And my other son, Philip, I know he's in my life because he has helped each one of us at some point in time. And so he was there to stabilize the water through difficult situations. People can figure out who the people they're associated with, or that are significant in their lifetime, by remembering these specific moments and writing down who the people were, the major players that were in your life at that particular time, and what did you learn by them. And you will know that these are probably the contracts that you have. So maybe if you had a person who was very difficult, or was a horrible situation, what did you learn, how to protect yourself, or something else that you wouldn't have gotten that education another way. And it also, might be that in a previous lifetime, you're balancing karma from that.
Yeah.
Where they're going to end up balancing karma in their next one.
Yeah.
too. Oh, yes.
Yes.
It puts a
I love.
whole new view on life.
Yes, and I love the roles that you spoke about how balancing stilling, the waters being still. There are different roles in which before having gained perspective, before I would think, oh, you should change. But sometimes being rigid or dogmatic, some things are just there to make you have that realization, self-reflecting, and you. It's amazing what you can come to the conclusion, post after the fact. It's amazing how that kind of brings a more, to me, I know it's cheese, but a loving um Jesus consciousness, Christ consciousness, what would Jesus do type unconditional loving vibe, because you realize, okay, they are doing a role. It's not to get anybody out of accountability that is a murderer or anything else like that, but I do find this truth in one of his messages is like, they all come to this place that they are doing something that's their avatar, that kind of thing.
And I know this panel, when I was sent back to my body, I knew this panel had laid out how I was going to learn. I wasn't necessarily aware of how it was going to transpire, but I had picked out the lessons that I had wanted to learn from. And if you think about this being pre-planned before you even come here, if you want someone to play a difficult role in your life, it's got to be somebody that really cares for you up in heaven, because nobody wants to play a difficult role. They don't want to do these bad
Amen.
things.
Amen. Amen. They have the most love of all. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
It's very possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, possibilities.
But sadly, you can't understand these things unless you're looking in the rearview mirror, because you don't know what's ahead. But just know that it is based off of your own choices and certain lessons that you have had planned. So life is the most mystical adventure that you'll ever have. So, wake up each day, with a sense of wonder on where you're going to be guided and who you're going to be shown, or who you're going to help, or vice versa.
Absolutely. It's so unpredictable.
Most of it. Yeah.
True. My mom always says, that Forrest Gump quote, life's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Honestly, that day, it's like you were speaking of things that, people that are very important and play a role. It's like, somebody the other day told me, because I sat and I just talked to her. I didn't have any money to give to her. I'm like, oh, girl, I'm broke. And she was fascinated and she was baffled, and it's like sad but beautiful. She's like, yeah, it's okay. You can go. It's so nice that you're talking to me like a regular person. And I'm like, man, there should be more people, because I've been there, done that. I'm an authentic person, man. We're the same, and it was just intriguing, because I thought about the whole thing where people talk about near-death experiences will say, hey, I thought I was going to see a big moment, but I saw these little moments in which I talked to somebody, and let's say they didn't end their life, or it affected them in a positive way. So I just think that that's really neat, that we are all like entangled in this spider web of, like I call the walking angels on earth. Like, your son has helped everyone in their own right in your family. And I think that it's beautiful, all the roles that we play,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, but before we go, let's talk about how people can understand their spirit communication.
Okay.
And that's so ridiculously easy. People don't even realize it, because if you think about, going out the door and you left your keys, and you get this subtle message, you left your keys, that's not your own mind. That's your spirit communication that's guiding you to that. Or if you, for instance, I was baking a cake one day, and I got out the mixer and I plugged it in. But before I was going to go get the beaters, I heard a voice say, unplug that. So I was to that. But it's those subtle messages. That is your spirit communication. Or they can draw your vision to something.
Yes. Do you think that a lot of people discount that as imagination? Because I know I did for a long time, but the more you trust, man, the more miracles and abundance that flow into your life, right?
And you thank them. Say, oh, thank you very much for that.
You.
Yeah, because they're around us all the time. Try asking for a good parking spot at the grocery store ahead of time, when you're on your way there, so they have a little action time. But yes, then you usually find a parking spot too.
I agree.
Make it fun. Make it fun.
Yes,
and then you'll realize
how much it is relevant, right? I mean, I have had big, huge events like saving from a car, whatever it had been, but then silly things, literally, especially in the last year, where I will be like, oh, I wish I had another meal bar. Those were long gone. And then I'm like looking, and on the bed, there's a meal bar. And I'm like,
yes,
you.
That's right.
That's I mean, it sounds silly, but it is so profoundly true for my truth. You know what I mean? And I love that you share that too.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of feel, I guess, because of programming or whatever you want to look at it, as if it's silly to listen to that. Like it's just the voice in their head. But guess what? That voice is translating through spirit into your consciousness to guide you, you know?
It's the voice on on a wisp of wind that comes in it. I mean, they even talk about that in the Bible, he heard on the wind. So it's so I try and relate my story in my book to both the spiritual community and the Christian community, because it's in both. The silver cord is the tether that that the spiritual community talks about. So
I think it's so neat because absolutely the Bible is just genius as long as you look at it like, let's say I was talking to somebody who'd never been accustomed to that. As long as you look at it with an open mind and not saying, oh, I have to be this religion. I think that a lot of different religions have these stories like Gilgamesh and the flood and whatever it is that are very, very tied into, and it's the message that I believe Jesus is saying. It's the message, not the method, if that makes sense.
That's right.
And so I think it's beautiful that you tied in, and I have chills because I really will. I'll get off and do my little thing, and I want to look it up, the cord, because of course I definitely have read that in a couple of books from spiritualists or people I believe might have been the Dalai Lama. I just have seen that not in a religious or Bible context. So I would love to. I mean, I have my Bible highlighted. I have the Bhagavad Gita. I just very much drawn to theology, and just it's beautiful and it's mystical, and it was their interpretation of to what is going on, which is basically God, the light. So that's really neat.
He's the super consciousness of everything. And even was another near-death experiencer who asked God what the right religion is, and he chuckled. Actually, Jesus, and he chuckled and he says, "Whatever brings you closer to me." So there you go.
Well, hallelujah on that. That's gorgeous. I love that. Oh my gosh. I just wanted to tell you, of course, I'm going to end this call, but I literally think that you have so much loving wisdom. It's coming out of this place, and I just find you to be vibrant. I'm wondering, I know it's silly, but I'm wondering what astrological sign are you?
I'm Scorpio.
Oh my gosh. My dad was Scorpio, 11/1. I knew it. I should have seen what I mean. I wasn't trusting myself to go, I said something here. I'm a Pisces. And so 2 grandpas, my dad and my youngest daughter, who's like a mini me, but in a different kind of like eloquent way, the way I'm looking at you. Very well spoken. I would love to have you back if you're down. I can't wait to. I'm going to read your book. I'm kind of a procrastinator when it comes to reading. I'm going to read your book. I know that I've seen you on a couple of interviews. So this was just beautiful. I think that, I just can't say enough how appreciative I am.
You'll hear the rest of the story, and don't forget to rate. Don't forget to rate it. That'll help me. So
Oh yes. You mean like on the Google, the Yelp, Amazon. Yeah. Okay. Hey, I will do that, and I really, really appreciate your energy. This has given me, some food for my soul, some elixir for the remainder of the day. And so I thank you so much, and thank you guys. It's been an hour. I thought it was like 20 minutes, and I was cutting it in short. I love that you share the gift of gab, and I can't thank you enough. My cheeks are just. Very tight and beaming. So have a wonderful day, and I will absolutely message you. And of course, I'll try to hold back from already setting a date. And then good luck with everything you have going on in the next week, and just blessings.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody. I think it might click us